Right now, while you are going about your day, there are men living in a space no larger than a service van. They are currently 200 meters beneath the North Sea, or perhaps the Gulf of Mexico. They aren't visiting. They aren't passing through. They are living there. They wake up at 3 in the morning in a bunk that smells of recycled helium and sweat. They eat meals passed through a small circular pressure lock. And when they speak to their wives on the surface, they sound like cartoon characters, a high-pitched, squeaky chirp that masks the reality of their situation.
This is not a filter. This is my real voice. I'm currently breathing heliox at a depth of 300 feet.
Because if they were to open the door, if a single seal on that metal tube were to fail, they wouldn't just die. They would cease to exist in a physical form we recognize. We like to think we've conquered the ocean. We see the cruise ships and the shallow reefs, and we think we understand the water. But the deep ocean has a specific kind of hatred for human biology. For every 33 feet you go down, the weight of the entire atmosphere above you doubles. At the depths where these men work, the air you are breathing right now would turn into a neurotoxin. Nitrogen would drug you into a stupor. Oxygen would trigger massive, chest-crushing seizures. To survive there, you have to replace your air with a strange, synthetic cocktail called heliox, a mixture of helium and just enough oxygen to keep the heart beating. But there is a price for this survival. The deeper you go, the more this gas dissolves into your blood, into your fat, into your very cells. If you try to come home too fast, that gas turns back into bubbles. Imagine opening a warm bottle of soda. That is what happens to your bloodstream. For the oil and gas industry, sending a diver down for an hour and then spending 4 days decompressing them was a waste of money. So in the 1960s, they found a loophole in physics. They realized that once your body is saturated, once you can't physically hold any more gas, you don't owe the ocean any more time. Whether you stay down for an hour or a month, the decompression time is the same. So they made a choice. They would put the divers in a pressure cooker and leave them there for 28 days at a time. Welcome to saturation diving, the most dangerous job on Earth, and the one job where the rules are written in blood. To understand the stakes of this life, we have to talk about November 5th, 1983. The North Sea was cold, and the rig Byford Dolphin was floating over the Frigg gas field. Inside Chamber 1, 4 men were waiting. They had just finished their shift. They were tired. They were thinking about the bunks. The pressure inside their living quarters was set to 9 atmospheres. Outside, on the deck of the ship, it was 1 atmosphere. Between those two worlds was a small, pressurized trunk. Think of it as a hallway between life and the void. A dive tender named William Crammond was working the clamp on the outside. He was a professional. He had done this 100 times. But humans are not designed to work 12-hour shifts in high-stress environments without making a mistake. The procedure was a religious ritual. Close the bell door. Close the chamber door. Bleed the pressure from the trunk. Then, and only then, open the clamp. But the clamp was opened while the chamber door was still open. In a fraction of a second, the physics of the ocean asserted its dominance. 9 atmospheres of pressure tried to occupy 1 atmosphere of space. It wasn't an explosion. It was an explosive decompression. Air didn't just move. It became a solid wall of force. The interior door was jammed into a partial opening, a crescent-shaped gap only 24 inches wide. One of the divers, Truls Helvik, was standing right there. Forensic pathologists who studied the site later had to invent new language to describe what they saw. The pressure differential was so violent that it didn't just kill the men, it dismantled them at a molecular level. The blood in their veins didn't just bubble. The fat in their blood, the lipoproteins, actually turned into solids. Imagine the fat in a pan of bacon grease cooling and turning into white clumps. That happened inside their hearts while they were still standing.
For Hellevick, the man standing by the door, the exit was even more horrific. He was forced through that 24-inch gap. The report uses the term bisection. The contents of his chest and abdomen were expelled. They found parts of him 10 meters above the deck.
It took the families 26 years to get an apology. 26 years for the government to admit that while it was human error, the equipment had no fail-safe, no lock to keep the door shut when the pressure was high. But as horrific as that day was, it isn't the reason this job is a nightmare, because that was an accident. And in the deep, the correct way of doing things might be just as lethal.
Let's talk about the job when it goes right, when the clamps hold, when the divers follow every page of the manual. You spend 28 days in the tube. You weld the pipes that keep the modern world running. You come up slowly. You spend 5 days decompressing in a sterile room while the world goes on without you. You go home. You see your kids. You feel fine. But inside your joints, something is happening that you can't feel. It's called aseptic bone necrosis, or more simply, dead bone. For decades, the industry has noticed a pattern. Divers who have never had a single accident, men who were perfect professionals, are showing up to doctors with hips and shoulders that are literally crumbling. The theory is as haunting as the abyss itself. Even during a perfect decompression, tiny microbubbles of nitrogen form. They are too small to cause the bends. You don't feel the pain in your skin or your lungs. Instead, these bubbles find their way into the tiny blood vessels that feed your bone marrow. They get stuck. They cut off the oxygen to your skeleton. And because bone tissue is slow to react, you don't know it's happening. Bit by bit, small sections of your hip joint or your shoulder die. The bone turns into a dry, chalky substance. Eventually, the weight of your own body causes the joint to collapse. A 2024 review of saturation diving medical data admitted something terrifying. The connection between this dead bone and the job is, in their words, not fully understood.
We don't know if some men are just born with the wrong genetics for the deep, or if the deep is simply taking a tax from everyone who enters. Are some divers just lucky? Or is every saturation diver a ticking time bomb, waiting for their skeleton to realize it's already dead? The industry can't tell you. They don't have enough data, because most divers don't stay in the job long enough to be studied for 30 years. They quit, they break down, they move on. We are currently running a massive global experiment on human biology, and the test subjects are the ones who keep your lights on.
The ocean doesn't care about our protocols. It doesn't care about our 28-day limits or our medical advisory councils. It is a physical reality that was never meant for us. When you live at 9 atmospheres, you are essentially living on another planet. Your cells are changing. Your blood chemistry is shifting. Your very bones are being reshaped by the weight of the water.
The men who do this work don't talk about the Byford Dolphin much. They talk about the paycheck, about the brotherhood of the living coffin, about the strange, addictive peace of being 200 meters down, where the rest of the world's problems can't reach you. But they know the price. They know that every time they step into that diving bell, they are making a trade. They are trading their long-term health for a short-term fortune. The next time you turn on a faucet or fill up your car,
Think about the men in the North Sea, the recycled helium, the squeaky voices, and the silent bubbles currently working their way through a welder's hip.
The ocean doesn't forgive, and it never, ever forgets.